We've been talking about the unique song of Miriam and the women after the story of the splitting of the sea, and how they had extra simcha because that was relative to the fact that they had really felt the pain of the experience of Egypt more profoundly than the men had. And we wanted to know, what's the lesson for us? We began to explore the idea that throwing the children into the Nile, which undoubtedly was the harshest part of the Egyptian experience, and that was undoubtedly the part that really affected the women so deeply, so that in modern terms, drowning children in the Nile is the concept of drowning children in the framework and the mentality and the education system that says you need to serve this God if you want to be able to earn money. That's basically what it is. Now, what's interesting is when the Rebbe spoke about this, it was a time in American history where the concept of sending children to a Torah education was like out of the question. Everybody was post-Holocaust. People were trying to put their lives back together. There was an expectation in America that in order to make it in life, you had to work on Shabbos, you had to get a degree, and so on and so forth. Well, maybe the emphasis on having to work on Shabbos maybe has dissipated a little bit, but the notion that you have to immerse children from the youngest age into secular education in order for them to succeed in the future still remains very strongly today. And it's ironic, as we discussed, because at the end of the day, who even knows if the things we're teaching children in school today are actually going to be relevant by the time they have to enter the job market? We don't know that. But the perspective of Torah is totally different to that. It's got nothing at all to do with whether or not these are the skills that you'll have or whether or not it's what you need in order to succeed. There's a cardinal principle of Judaism that is incredibly important, and that is that at the end of the day, no person can ever earn 1 cent more than what Hashem has allocated for them, and no person will ever earn less than what Hashem has allocated for them, provided, of course, they're willing to put in some effort. So we don't expect in Judaism that somebody's going to sit with their feet up and just say, God will provide. That's nonsense. The Mishnah says, for example, that if you have Torah learning without melacha, without actual work, it's bad, and it's going to end with both losing your Torah learning and with a person in a bad space and perhaps even sinning because of it. So we know that. You look historically, you'll see that most of the sages, the great sages of history, also had other jobs that they did. Many of the rabbis in the Talmud were laborers, actual hands-on physical laborers. The Rambam, as we famously know, was a doctor, so was the Ramban, and so on and so forth. So there is a concept that you have to be able to work in order to earn. And King David says it in Tehillim. He says, "Yigia kapecha ki soichel ashecha v'toiv lach." When you eat by the labor of your own hands, then you will be happy and things will be good for you. And the Gemara says you'll be happy in this world and things will be good for you in the next world. So nobody's arguing that a person has to be a productive citizen. However, what we do need to question, and it's a difficult thing for people to question because it's really swimming upstream, is who says that in order to facilitate a person earning a living, looking after their family, who says that we have to take that child at the youngest age and immerse them in a world of secular ideals and thinking to the exclusion of Torah values? That's the chap. When a child is going through their formative years, that's when we want them to soak in Torah. They don't at that point have to worry about how they're going to feed their family. Yes, there's certain key things that you want people to learn at that age, like, for example, critical thinking, like mathematics. You want them to learn language development, etc. But who says that at that point in time, that has to be done in the structure of a secular environment? Have you ever learned Gemara? Do you have any idea how much it expands a person's mind? How much it allows a person to develop rational thinking and lateral thinking? It goes without question. I'll tell you an interesting thing. Over the last couple of months or so, one of my kids has been speaking to entrepreneurs. He wants to know about it. How do you make money? How do you succeed in business, or whatever the case is? He's speaking to a whole variety of people. Some of them include some of the most successful people in this country. He's managed to get through the door with the right people. What's interesting about it is that of all the people that he's spoken to, 90% of them are not religious Jews. And of them, he's already had 3 different individuals, and as I say, like really successful people who've told him, make sure that you go to yeshiva, because they say, in my experience, the people that I've employed I've always found that those who have yeshiva knowledge are streets ahead in terms of their ability to think, to strategize, to negotiate, to innovate, streets ahead of any other person that they've employed. Now, this is fascinating coming from people who are not themselves observant, because at the end of the day, that all these things that we claim have to come through the secular venues, the secular avenues in the early education, you can get that and more through Torah. But what you get more than anything else is you get healthy Jews. You get Jewish people who have the right value system. You get Jewish people who are committed to Judaism, so that we can perpetuate a Judaism that has survived 2,000 years of everybody from the outside trying to bash and destroy us, now has the challenge of trying to survive the issues we have from within, the people within our own communities who undermine Jewish values because secular thinking and the modern world in their minds trumps everything. Now that's painful. That's painful to a Jewish mother. It's painful to a Jewish mother to see her child, whether she's conscious of it or not, because very often when you're in an experience, you don't necessarily see how it's damaging to you. And then afterwards, with the benefit of hindsight, you look back and you have regrets. And so it's painful to a Jewish mother at some point to turn around and say, I don't know what happened to my little Moishele. I don't understand why it is that he's disinterested in his Judaism, why it is that he's dating outside of the faith. I don't understand it. I don't know where it came from. So in the same way as in the story of Egypt, it was the women who felt much more acutely what was happening, what was damaging their children. The reality is that that's the nature of people throughout history. Whether you want to say that men and women today work equal hours, and maybe it's not the same where women are at home with their kids as much as they used to be, doesn't change the fact that women are the ones who are especially sensitized to their children's well-being. And so actually that's who we need to speak to. We need to say to the mothers, you need to ensure that you invest in your children from the youngest age, wholesome, good Torah values. We need not be afraid of sending our children to schools that give them a wholesome Torah education. And yes, maybe the secular education is a little bit of a backseat in those early years. It's fine, trust me. I've seen it 1,000,001 times. They'll catch up when the time arises. And today everything is online, so you see these kids, they go through the whole schooling system. At the end of the schooling system, they'll end up doing SATs, or they'll end up doing an overseas degree anyway to get them into whichever college or university they want to go to. Nobody says that you have to drill them for years and years and years with all the thoughts, not just the information, but the worldview and perspective of something that's absolutely foreign to Judaism. What we need to do is we need to drill our children from the youngest age with those good, wholesome values of connection to Hashem and respect of Torah and mitzvahs, and to be a mensch that have held our people for thousands of years. That's the take-home lesson from this particular story. And it can never, in those days, the pressure came from slave drivers. The pressure came from people who were outwardly aggressive. Today, the pressure comes from your next door neighbor. Today it's the, keeping up with the Cohens. Everybody's on about their child goes to this extramural and they're having that kind of language development process, and does your school teach this? And it becomes like this whole race for who could produce the most academically developed child. And unfortunately, along the way, we're forgetting about producing the best human being, the best Jew. That's what we're here for. We're a fraction of a percentage of the population. There's only so many Jews, and we have to be a light and guide and inspiration to the rest of the world, and we have to fulfill Hashem's mission, which is to create a holy space in this world. Nobody else is going to do it. We can't afford to lose people along the way. So it's the guts and courage of Jewish parents, particularly mothers, to be able to stand up and say, I don't need my child to be just like everybody else. I don't need my child to be on social media like everybody else. I don't need my child to be the first person to know every headline as it breaks. I was talking to a friend yesterday who's a doctor, very, very involved in a coronavirus unit and has been right throughout the whole thing. And he says the worst thing that you can do right now is listen to the media. He says he cannot get over the way in which international media has been sharing medical information that is absolutely unfounded. Absolutely unfounded. So we don't need our children to be exposed to that from the youngest age and absorbing whatever particular line of narrative happens to be coming their way. We need Jewish children who are well grounded in truth with a capital T. Emes Hashem, the truth of Hashem in this world. And that is primarily the gift and responsibility that mothers have, because there's nobody who has a more direct line into the thinking and into the behavior and into the education of a young child than a mother. And any father who disagrees with that, try to convince your wife to take your child out of school and put them into a different school that she hasn't properly vetted. You'll know immediately who exactly has the say in education. Now, what's fascinating about the story in the original is that when Miriam leads the song of the Jewish women after the splitting of the sea, the Torah tells us, Vata'an lohem Miriam, that she began the song by responding to them. Now, in Hebrew, of course, words are either feminine or masculine, so it's quite surprising that Miriam speaks to a female crowd, and the Torah uses the word lohem with a mem at the end, which is a masculine word. So make up your mind, was she speaking to men or was she speaking to women? The Medrash says a fascinating thing. The Medrash says when the Egyptians began to drown, the angels began to sing to Hashem, and Hashem stopped them. And he said, you cannot sing at such a time. My people are dying. It doesn't matter that they're Egyptians and that they're villains. The fact is they're people that I created. They're dying right now. It's not a time to sing. After the miracle was over and the Jewish people had been saved, then the Jewish people started to sing. So the angel said, okay, now can we sing? Now can we sing? So Hashem says, no, the humans have to sing first, because unlike you, they have reason to sing because they were saved. So it's not just to praise Hashem for doing a miracle, it's to praise Hashem for a miracle that was very personal. They had personally been saved from a very threatening situation, so they could sing. So the angels wait. They wait to be able to sing. Then, after the men finish singing, the women start to sing. So the angels say, now can we sing? I mean, this is just women, right? Well, what's the big deal? Women are second-class citizens in Judaism. No, isn't it? So Hashem says, no, not only can you not sing now, says the Medrash, you have to wait for Miriam to give you permission. That's why it says, Vata'an lohem Miriam, to them in the masculine, that until the women sing, the angels do not have permission to sing. And that teaches you a very, very powerful lesson about the position, the influence, and the power that women have. When women sing that song, what song? The song of having escaped Egypt. The song of breaking out of the group think. Breaking out of what they call in today's world being sheeple. You know, that everybody just follows the leader. That song of singing that I'm able to think independently and to key in to Hashem's truth and to the Torah's truth and to values that are timeless values, and to be able to bring my child up to be the kind of Jew that Hashem wants, and not the kind of Jew that Pharaoh wants to throw into and drown in the rivers of secular thinking, then that song is so powerful that gives permission, which means it also gives impetus to even the angels to sing. So it might feel sometimes like a load on our shoulders, this responsibility of educating our children right. But get it right, and the influence that you have now extends beyond this world and even influences the higher spiritual realms as well, which is quite an incredible thought.